Trump continues to repeat all sorts of misinformation when it comes to coronavirus in an effort to minimize the severe impact it's having on people's lives. We now know that while coronavirus numbers have been increasing for quite some time now, unfortunately, the number of deaths is also now starting to catch up with the increase in the number of cases. So it's devastating. Clearly that there needs to be more done. Dr. Anthony Fauci made it clear that states that are experiencing this surge certainly should consider shutting down for a second time. But Donald Trump, again, has minimized it. And the latest example is during an interview with Sean Hannity. Let's take a look.
We do testing like nobody's ever done testing. And when we test, the more you test, the more cases you find. Other countries, when they test, and I ask them all, they test when somebody's not feeling well or when somebody walks into a hospital. So we have cases all over the place. Most of those cases immediately get better. They get, people, they're young people, they have sniffles, and 2 days later they're fine and they're not sick to sort of test. Everybody test, pull up parking lots, everything else. What we've done is we've created a tremendous number of cases. The testing is just showing up all these cases. And if you turn the news on, you'll see it's always the word cases. They don't talk about death because deaths are way down. They talk about cases, all the time cases. And those cases get better. And they, in most cases, literally in most cases, they automatically cure. They automatically get better.
Okay, so we have seen data that shows that while the amount of testing has remained consistent, the number of new coronavirus cases, meaning the percentage of people who end up testing positive, has continued to increase. It increases literally every single day in a row. And yesterday it was reported for the first time that the number of deaths have now spiked when we had been experiencing, a decline for weeks. And so this is not a good situation. But of course, Donald Trump wants to give the appearance of normalcy when in reality, a lot of people are struggling right now. ICUs are at capacity, especially in states like Florida, where they're gonna have to put elective surgeries on hold again in order to make room for coronavirus patients. And he repeated, similar talking points during his speech on the 4th of July. Let's take a quick look at that.
Now we have tested almost 40 million people. By so doing, we show cases, 99% of which are totally harmless.
During his interview with Hannity, he took the opportunity to attack Dr. Anthony Fauci and essentially argue that, he's a nice guy, but he's gotten a lot of things wrong, as if Donald Trump is someone who's handled this virus appropriately. And so I wanna go to those comments real quick. And then after we do, I'll give you the response from an actual competent adult, Dr. Anthony Fauci.
What do you make of these hot spots, as we call them, in Florida and Texas and other states, and Dr. Fauci's comments?
Well, first of all, the mortality rate, and Dr. Fauci's a nice man, but he's made a lot of mistakes. Like, you don't have to ban him coming in from very infected China. I did it anyway, and we saved hundreds of thousands of lives. I banned Europe from coming in when Italy and when France and Spain were having all the problems, and we saved hundreds of thousands of lives. A lot of people said, don't do it. They've been wrong about a lot of things, including face masks. Maybe they're wrong, maybe not, but a lot of them said, don't wear a mask, don't wear a mask, and now they're saying wear a mask. So a lot of mistakes were made, a lot of mistakes.
Donald Trump told people to inject themselves with disinfectant. So I just don't think that he gets to be the arbiter of who's made the most mistakes during this novel coronavirus pandemic. And I just want to be clear that yes, in the beginning of the pandemic, we're dealing with a novel coronavirus, meaning that this is a first-time virus that a lot of people in the health community, scientists, were trying to really get a firm grasp on and understand. And so in the beginning, of course, there were certain things that weren't exactly right. But the right intentions were in place when it came to actual experts like Dr. Anthony Fauci. When you look at someone like Donald Trump, who's only motivated and fueled by his own political interest, I mean, there's no question that he is the worst person to listen to and trust when it comes to something that could put your life at risk or put the lives of your family members at risk. Now, with that said, Dr. Anthony Fauci did respond, Cenk, and he told the Financial Times the following: I'm trying to figure out where the president got that number, indicating that 99% of coronavirus cases are harmless. What I think happened is that someone told him that the general mortality is about 1%. And he interpreted, therefore, that 99% is not a problem when that's obviously not the case. Now, this is classic Fauci, trying to get actual information out to the public while also trying to let Trump off the hook in order to prevent, negative or any tension between them. But it's already too late. Donald Trump is now publicly attacking him, and Fauci hasn't even spoken to Donald Trump since June. So this is a pretty devastating update. It doesn't seem like Trump is it has any motivation to take this seriously.
All right, first of all, I'd like to note that it appears Anna's trying to do meditation. So when we come back from the Trump clips, I see like a before she tells you the rest of the story. All right, now on to serious stuff. So look, there's actually a sliver of truth in what Trump is saying. Some percentage of, and significant percentage of cases, folks are completely asymptomatic or it is really minor, and it has to do with your T cells. Beyond that, I'm not a scientist, Jim. I'm a talk show host, and so I can't explain the details to you guys. But some folks have said as many as 35% of the cases basically show very little symptoms to none. Okay, now is it true that that means 99% of the cases are totally harmless, as Trump said? No. And the mortality rate reported by a lot of folks is also too high because, ironically, we actually are not seeing most of the cases. If we tested more, we would see there's so many more cases, and that would bring the mortality rate down because the deaths are indisputable. There's a certain number of deaths, and if there's more cases, that means the mortality rate is smaller as a percentage, right? So I know a lot of that sounds confusing. Let me see if I could boil it down further for you guys. Of the cases that we know, and there's plenty of cases we don't, but of the cases we know, 20% wind up getting hospitalized. I'm actually shocked at what a gigantic number that is. If you're hospitalized, that is nowhere near sniffles. I mean, it has to get real bad before they allow you to be hospitalized. And so, in the early on in the epidemic, I had a fever. It turns out I had a flu and an infection. I did not have coronavirus, but I had 103-degree fever, and they're like, no way, we're not even gonna test you, let alone hospitalized or anything along those lines. So it has to be very severe to get hospitalized, and 20% of the cases do. So the idea that it's 99% of the cases are no big deal is a total misunderstanding of the situation. And by the way, though, it is true, like I explained before, that some percentage of the cases are no big deal, but it's impossible to know what you're gonna get. It's like a crazy lottery. Dr. Fauci said, look, it's the perfect storm because there's this giant range of symptoms from almost nothing to death. And it jumped from animals to humans. It's transmitted super easily and has a relatively high mortality rate. So when you put all those things into one batch as we have here, we have a very dangerous virus, but it's impossible to determine if you're gonna get nothing or death. So Jesus Christ, and that is boiled down by Trump to, it's totally harmless for 99% of people, and I knew everything, and he said I prevented hundreds of thousands of cases. Get the hell out of here. That is such an insane number to throw out there.
There's so much that we don't know because how many people are sick with coronavirus, have symptoms, but don't feel comfortable going to the doctor because it's gonna be too expensive? Who knows how many people have died from coronavirus, but it's not recorded, right? Like there are all sorts of things. And by the way, you might not appear to have any symptoms from coronavirus, but there's growing evidence indicating that even among young, healthy people who never experience any symptoms, there could be blood clots, there could be internal organ damage. This is something that's also rapidly mutating and getting stronger. So to minimize it, especially at a time when we're starting to see the number of deaths spike in relation to the coronavirus cases spiking, it's the worst possible time to minimize this and pretend like it's a non-issue. And that's exactly what Trump is doing, while also distancing himself from actual health experts like Anthony Fauci.
And guys, one last complication and then one simple fact. There appear to be different strains of the virus in different parts of the world. So, and Trump trying to understand these complicated facts is an impossibility. I mean, he brags that he can tell the difference between a lion and an elephant in a drawing. Literally, that's later in the show. And so a mind that simple, that sad, has no ability to figure out any of this stuff. And that's why, can I see the graph between us and Europe? So this gives you a sense of the enormous incompetence of Donald Trump. That right there is Donald Trump's presidency. Europe cases and our cases start exactly the same way. We both skyrocket because in the beginning there's almost nothing you can do about it in terms of before you find out about the disease. Then Europe handles it effectively, it goes way down. Trump clowns the hell out of the disease and it goes way up for us instead of going down. And that's the Trump effect. So the simple number is, I know it varies by website that you go to, but right now the most reliable site that I use has US deaths at 136,000. We lead the world in deaths. That is inarguable and by a lot. And you saw the chart there. So we have bungled this through and through. And Dr. Fauci was polite in the ways that Anna described, but in other parts of the interview, he said, look, he said, I have a reputation, as you probably have figured out, of speaking truth at all times and not sugarcoating things. And that may be one of the reasons why I haven't been on television very much lately. He said he hasn't talked to Trump since June 2nd. Can you imagine not talking to the top medical expert you have on a pandemic as 130,000 people are dead for over a month, for nearly 6 weeks? That means I don't care. I don't care that you're all dying. The only thing I care about is politics. And finally, why is Fauci getting fed up and saying things that are a little bit harsher? He said, look, I've gotten death threats. My family's been harassed, my wife and children. So in Trump's America, if you actually dare speak the truth as a scientist and warn people about something that might kill them, Trump's goons come out and threaten to kill you, your wife, and your kids. That's why we have more spikes, more cases, and more deaths than anyone else, because our leader is a malicious idiot who spread this plague among us. When you sign up for a spend and save account at aspiration.com/TYT, we will plant 10 trees. Let's save the planet together.